Is that the only one you're taking?
There's no need to take anything else. There might be if I can find.
Can I sit in the chair and just watch it go?
I'm just wondering if about. Paints.
He was very mischievous, very cheeky. He could say the almost rudest things to people and then he'd smile and he just got away with it. Everybody's unique, not everyone's special. I would say Duncan is special, but I'd say that. But a lot of people say that. He liked being with people, he liked being in crowds, he liked observing people. So the grounding he had with his father, going around all the football stadiums, I think that started him observing people and all the tensions between people. So a lot of his paintings are crowds of people, crowds of faces, and that has come straight from being in the football grounds.
He's quite scruffy. He's a very relaxed kind of person. I found him very relaxing to be around. But his sort of look and his demeanour was just different to probably anyone else that I'd met. If he could use 2 words to say something, he would do that. He wasn't bothered about filling in gaps. He said it. It was to the point. I think this is probably why we were quite close.
He wasn't somebody who would shout about himself from the rooftops. So when I first met him, I knew he was a northerner because he wanted to tell me that quite quickly, because he didn't want me to think he was a southerner, because he didn't identify with the south at all. People can be quite brusque. They will say what they think, especially Yorkshire people. I don't think anyone could look at Duncan's art and not have some kind of visceral reaction to it. I never saw anybody at any of his exhibitions walking past. It's begging to be looked at because it's so bizarre, some of it. The painting A Child of 7 Could Have Done It was actually something somebody said to him at one of his exhibitions. They were looking round. Somebody said to the wife, "He's rubbish, a child of 7 could have done that." So he took it and did make it into a painting.
There was something that I'm sure we talked about it at times. It was quite childlike about his painting style. And I seem to remember that it took me a while to sort of get it, but we had quite a few conversations about painting and creating like a child, and actually it being a deliberate thing.
Someone insulted him, great, he used it. That's fine by him. Someone's had a reaction to it, that's good.
Duncan painted often about the sort of small details in life, the little interactions, the things that he would find on a tabletop, or the view from his window, whatever it may be. It was always sort of quite simple things. People talking together, people standing in a line, in a queue, crowds of people, things like that. He loved being with people. He's a really sociable person, but at the same time, he liked to sort of keep his distance, if you know what I mean.
If you look around the streets, when you're walking down the street, if you look at people, the majority of people have either a completely blank expression, they might be looking at the phones. A lot of people naturally walk with their head down, or they might be walking with their head up and they pass somebody and they'll put their head down. And that's what you see everywhere. People aren't interested as to why someone's smiling usually. I'm not. Maybe it's a northern thing. But if someone's looking troubled or down or frowning or miserable, you want to think, you're thinking, what the hell's wrong with them? That's what I think.
He was always interested in people's interactions. It was quite, a lot of observations, things that would catch his eye and spark his imagination. How people talk to each other, how people stood next to each other in a bus stop or something like that. Just very, very simple, mundane aspects of life.
When he first met me, I said I know nothing about art, because he said I'm an artist, and I was like, I'm going to be out of my depth. And he said, "Yeah, I don't know anything about art. It's just art's it's what you like, isn't it?" And he said, "Can you paint?" I said, "I can't." He said, "Now, what do you mean you can't paint?" And I said, "Well, when I was at school, we were asked to draw a picture of one of our parents in their professional capacity. So I did a picture of my mother in a nurse's uniform in poster paint, and she had the hat on as I did then, the belt, the fob watch, everything like that. And I put a black line all the way around it, not a thick black line, but I was outlining it. And my teacher, Mr. Wilkinson, said to me, "That's rubbish." He said, "Why have you got a black line? Does your mother walk around with a black line around her?" And I said, "I've not painted since." And he said, "Go on, do something for me now." So I got some crayons or something that I had and did an elephant or something. It was hideous. He loved it. I said, "But it looks like a child's done it." He said, "That's great, you've created something." So he didn't like the way the school system, and this wasn't a political thing, but if it wasn't perfect or what they thought was perfect, you were told art's not for you because it wasn't perfectly shaded or proportioned or thought out in any particular way. He didn't want, for him, art wasn't like that.
Most of Duncan's paintings have quite sort of big, bold lines, quite a sort of simple look to them, which is kind of like Duncan, really. When I think about Duncan, on the surface at least, he looks like quite a straightforward guy, and I think that comes across in his paintings. But when you look a little deeper and a little further into it, you can see there's clearly more going on.
Duncan was not a gloomy person. A lot of his paintings have gloomy people, but you couldn't call it bleak. I don't think you can categorise most of his art. Most of it's what's exactly in his head that he's put on paper, and you decide what it's about.
I've gone backwards and forwards on this one so much I can't quite work out what the hell is going on. So I've not actually come up with a name.
So with Duncan's artwork, the titles could take a long time to appear, and it was like they appeared.
I'd say the titles are a massive part of the paintings. I never played a part in it. He never asked me to title anything. But when I look at Duncan's paintings and see the titles, the title is the payoff. It does make you. It often makes you chuckle, or sometimes it makes you think. Sometimes it makes you raise your eyebrow. But the title's definitely part of it. In that sense, it's almost like a multimedia kind of experience.
People look at titles and, for example, Looking for a Bridge. When I saw it, I thought the man's head looked like a pickled onion. So I said, "Oh, it's Mr. Pickles." And he says, "No, it isn't. It's Looking for a Bridge." That artwork was shown at Art in the Pen, and that was the first painting that sold. Someone said, "Oh my God, that's miserable. Oh, is he suicidal?" And Duncan said, "No, he's looking for a bridge." And the guy said, "It's amazing, I'll buy it." And Duncan said to me, if it had been called Mr. Pickles, I don't think it would have been bought. I have several favourite paintings. One of them is City of Freaks at Night, because I couldn't stop looking at it. I'd always see a new face in it. I could stare at it for ages. Unfortunately, he sold that. I did say to him, "Can you make sure the client knows it's your wife's favourite painting?" I love that one. I love A Pair of Devious Dogs, just because it's cheeky. It's like Duncan. It's just two animals. I personally do love the painting of me, which is called It Sleeps, and it was one done of me. It was a sketch. I've seen the actual sketch since he passed away, and I've been going through his books, and it's because I was asleep with a frown, so that was perfect. I just like that because it was watching me while I slept, and I think that's so lovely. In his Manchester period, there's lots of paintings of drunk people or people in pubs, because that's what he was doing at the time. There's two types of Duncan showing in his paintings. There's ones that are physically of him. So there's one hung over at a bar in Manchester, you know, with a 5 o'clock shadow and head in his hands. There are quite a few of that period actually where you know it is Duncan in some form, but it's really in every painting. When he did paint himself, it was the faults. He never said faults, but you know, it was the. So you can see most in his younger years. In his later years, he didn't do a self-portrait, but he might do one of those, the dogs or the hogs or the beasts with a teeth like that. That's Duncan. And if there's a little stripy worm in there, that's me. But it wouldn't be like a human person. It would be an animal or a beast of some sort.
There's a lot of humour. There's a lot of sort of touching moments, and there's a lot of things that sort of make you stop and think, which is kind of what he was about. He liked that. He liked making people stop in their tracks and think.
A lovely painting of his was Smoking Gran, and it was his grandmother, Pauline. Absolutely, full of character, never stopped talking, and chain smoked. And he did a beautiful portrait of her, Duncan style, smoking. And that's exactly what he saw. But then sometimes it would be what's in his head. Arabian goats, 2 goats. He hadn't seen any goats that day. He had very lucid dreams as well. That would also go on a canvas or whatever he had to hand to scribble on.
He clearly had a really strong desire to put things down on paper. You know, it was just like an insatiable sort of hunger.
There were times when he was so creative, he had so much in his head. There'd be scribbles everywhere, across the dining room table, on the floor, down the back of the couch, and he'd grab it all and bring it to the studio. It needed to be painted. Duncan didn't just paint for the sake of painting. He had to paint.
He was clearly his own person. He had his own sort of visual language, and everything that he did for himself, and it came from him.
In some ways, he did want people to see what was in his head, but really, he just wanted to paint. I think Duncan would want people to look at his artwork and have a reaction. I think the worst thing for an artist, for me, if I was an artist, is someone to look at it and go, and walk on. I think knowing that people enjoyed his work it meant a huge amount to him.
There was lots of really charming qualities to Duncan, but one that came out quite so within the last few years was I realised just how close he was to all his hamsters. One time I just witnessed him preparing the hamsters' food, and it was with like such care and attention to detail. It was a really beautiful thing to witness. It was like a ceremony of some sort, where a little wooden chopping board with tiny little bits of cucumber and carrot and whatever else, but just really, really neatly arranged. Like I've never seen anything like that in Duncan's life before. It was really a lovely thing to see.
He was gentle and gentlemanly as well, which some people think gentlemanly, but kind, generous with his time. Yeah, very loving, a really gentle person, a sweet character. He'd probably hate me saying all of this, but this is how I would see him. Curmudgeonly is how his dad describes him. I'd say that's quite true. And I know he'd hate me saying this, he's a true eccentric. Naturally eccentric, because he didn't even realise it. That was just Duncan. One in a million, one in a billion.
He was sort of infamous for being the one that always wanted to carry on the party. It always carried on because of Duncan. In a sea of lots of other faces, people that you meet, Duncan was really memorable, and yeah, a really happy guy, just really interested in life and people. And and just lovely to spend time with.
He was a true artist. That's what I would want people to know.
I think people should take time to look at his paintings because they might just see something that they recognise, or something that challenges them, or something that makes them look at the world in a slightly different way.